Today, we're digging into the life of one of history's most polarizing figures. I mean, it's been 20 years since his death, and the name Saddam Hussein still brings up these powerful and honestly really contradictory images. So this is the central question, right? The one that really defines his whole legacy. To some people, he was this hero who stood up to global superpowers. But to others, he was nothing but a brutal, tyrannical dictator. The truth, as you're about to see, is way more complicated than that. To really understand the man, we have to go all the way back to his beginning, which was just brutal, and it casts this long shadow over everything now. His father died before he was ever born. His mother was so overcome with grief, she actually tried to kill herself. So his early life was just a constant fight for survival. Yeah, that early hardship, it forged a man who was pretty much defined by violence and a complete lack of fear. After his mom remarried, his stepfather's abuse got so bad that at just 10 years old, Saddam ran away. They say that as a kid, he always carried a steel rod with him, a pretty clear message to anyone who even thought about crossing him. You know, fear was a language he totally understood, but only as a tool to use against other people. And his rise was just shockingly fast. He went from this troubled kid to a major political player in just a handful of years. Through his uncle, he got into this small radical party and pretty quickly became its most violent and daring member. This fearlessness got him a spot on an assassination team targeting the Prime Minister. Now the attempt failed, but it absolutely put Saddam Hussein on the map. And here's a stunning twist of irony. His rise was quietly encouraged by the very nation that would one day lead to his downfall. After that failed assassination, his sheer audacity impressed some really powerful people, including, the American CIA. They reportedly saw him as a potential asset in a really volatile region. So when his Ba'ath Party finally grabbed power, Saddam came back from exile and bam, he was the second most powerful man in the country. Okay, so this brings us to the part where he really consolidates his power. And this is where he starts showing two very, very different faces to the world. On one hand, he was building a modern nation. But on the other, he was building a personal empire of fear. The 1973 oil crisis. That was the moment that changed absolutely everything. When Arab nations, led by Saudi Arabia, cut off oil sales to the US for supporting Israel, prices quadrupled. Just like that. Overnight. This flooded Iraq with an unimaginable amount of wealth, and Saddam saw his chance to reshape the entire nation in his own image. And he used that oil money to build a modern state from the ground up. I mean, he nationalized Iraq's oil industry, wresting control away from foreign companies. He brought electricity to every single village, built free schools, free hospitals, and created an economy that was so strong that one Iraqi dinar was worth $3. For a lot of Iraqis, this wasn't the work of a tyrant. This was the work of a hero. But behind his image of the benevolent modernizer, a much darker persona was starting to emerge. And believe it or not, it was inspired by Hollywood. He became obsessed with the movie The Godfather and literally started to model his public image on Don Corleone. He wore the same kind of hats, smoked cigars the same way, and just adopted that same air of quiet menace. He was crafting an image of absolute untouchable power. Just 6 days after becoming president, he staged this chilling public purge to get rid of any potential rivals. He calmly told the aging president that, hey, it was time to retire. Then he called a big meeting of the party leadership, and as the cameras rolled, he lit a cigar and started reading a list of names, supposed conspirators, right there in the room. One by one, they were escorted out. Of the 68 people he accused, dozens were executed. The whole thing was televised for all of Iraq to see. The message was crystal clear. I am in total control. So, at the absolute peak of his power, he made two catastrophic military decisions that really started his long decline. He was the most powerful man in Iraq, no doubt. And now, he wanted to project that power all across the Middle East. First up, he launched a devastating 8-year war against his neighbor, Iran. See, Iran's new revolutionary leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, was a Shia cleric, and his call for revolution was really firing up Shia populations across the region. Saddam, a Sunni leader in a majority Shia country, saw this as a direct threat to his power. So, with the backing of the US and other Arab nations who were also scared of Iran's influence, he invaded. The result? A bloody, senseless stalemate with a human cost that is just staggering. An estimated 1 million people were killed. Even with the world's support, Saddam just couldn't beat Iran. The war completely drained Iraq's treasury and ended with no clear winner, just immense loss of life on both sides. Drowning in debt from that war with Iran, he made his next fatal mistake. He asked his Arab allies to forgive the billions he'd borrowed, saying he'd fought the war for them. They said no. And to make matters worse, Kuwait started pumping more oil, which drove down prices and crushed Iraq's already fragile economy. Saddam didn't see this as a market thing, he saw it as a deliberate act of economic warfare. So Saddam believed he had a green light from Washington. In a now infamous meeting with the U.S. ambassador, he was allegedly told that America had no opinion on Arab conflicts. He took this as a sign of permission to invade, a catastrophic miscalculation. He had walked right into a trap. In just 2 days, his army overran all of Kuwait. And that invasion, well, it set the stage for a direct confrontation with the United States, which all came to a head a decade later with the end of his regime. America used the invasion as the reason to set up a permanent military presence in the region, especially in Saudi Arabia, and that changed the geopolitical landscape forever. The whole justification for the 2003 invasion, it was built on a series of claims that were just never proven. It kind of started when Saddam's own sons-in-law defected and claimed he was secretly building a nuclear bomb. Then, after the 9/11 attacks, the U.S. administration just amplified these claims, linking Saddam to weapons of mass destruction. It didn't matter that UN inspectors found nothing or that the world saw the largest anti-war protest in history. The invasion went ahead anyway. Within a month, the U.S. controlled Iraq. Saddam and his sons went into hiding, and a massive bounty was put on their heads, $25 million for Saddam and $15 million each for his sons. You know, that kind of money, it was ultimately going to be their undoing. It led to betrayal by the very people they trusted most. And that brings us to the final chapter, the dramatic hunt, his defiant end, and the chaotic legacy he left behind. A trusted friend, tempted by that combined $30 million reward, gave up the location of Saddam's sons, Uday and Qusay. They were cornered in a villa, and they, along with Saddam's 14-year-old grandson, fought for 3 hours against U.S. Special Forces before being killed. When Saddam heard the news, his first question wasn't about grief, it was about pride. He asked, did they surrender or did they die fighting? When he was told they fought to the end, he reportedly thanked God for giving him such brave sons. Months later, Saddam himself was found. Acting on a tip from another former ally, U.S. forces found him hiding in this tiny, cramped hole in the ground near a farmhouse. But even in this moment of total defeat, as they pulled him from this spider hole, his defiance was just unbroken. His first words weren't, "I surrender." They were a declaration. "I am Saddam Hussein, the president of Iraq." His removal, though, didn't bring peace. Not at all. Instead, it unleashed years of sectarian violence and instability that are still going on today. In a really critical error, the U.S.-led coalition just disbanded the entire Iraqi army overnight. This left hundreds of thousands of trained, angry, unemployed soldiers with no future, and they became the core of new insurgent groups, including the one that would later become known as ISIS. So, we end right back where we started. In his trial, he was defiant to the very last breath, mocking the judges, refusing to bow his head. His life was just a study in contradictions, a modernizer who used terror, a nation builder who started devastating wars. His legacy is still as complex and as fiercely debated as the man himself. So what do you think? What's the most important lesson we can take from his story?